At exactly 1942 Coordinated Earth time, every light surrounding the Eternal Harbor Memorial went dark. The blackout lasted only 3 seconds, but later, historians would spend decades arguing about those 3 seconds because nothing in the memorial complex was connected to a vulnerable grid. The power systems were isolated beneath reinforced bunkers built during the resource wars. Backup generators existed inside sealed chambers deep under the Atlantic cliffs. Even lightning strikes could not interrupt the ceremony held there every year. And yet the lights died anyway. One moment, world leaders stood beneath the towering black stone arches honoring humanity's dead. Children carried candles through the rain. Military choirs echoed across the harbor, while millions watched the broadcast from orbital's colonies and cities across Earth. The next moment, the sky split open, not metaphorically, literally. A line of white fire tore downward above the ocean clouds, so bright it erased the stars behind it. At first, people thought it was a meteor. Then the object changed direction. Meteors did not dodge. The burning shape twisted violently through the storm, trailing fragments of molten metal behind it. Air burst outward in thunderclaps strong enough to crack windows across the harbor district. Security teams rushed the diplomats toward underground shelters, while naval defense grids spun awake across the coastline. But the object never struck the city. It slammed directly into the center of the Memorial Plaza. Stone exploded upward in a wave of steam and shattered marble. The impact shook the harbor hard enough to trigger earthquake alarms across eastern North America. Thousands screamed. Broadcast drones spiraled out of control. Emergency sirens drowned beneath the roar of collapsing arches. Then, somehow, silence followed. Not true silence. The rain still fell. Fires crackled across broken stone. Somewhere far away, people were shouting orders. But inside the crater itself, there was a strange stillness, as if the world were holding its breath. The object resting there was not a meteor. It was a pod. Its surface glowed deep red from atmospheric burn, covered in symbols no human language database recognized. One side had been torn nearly open during descent. Strange silver liquid hissed onto broken marble below it. For 11 long seconds, nobody moved. Then the pod opened from the inside. What emerged was small. That was the first detail later reports kept repeating, because nothing about the situation matched expectation. Humanity had imagined first contact for generations. Massive ships, towering beings, fleets descending over capitals. Not this, not a frightened child collapsing barefoot into the rain. She could not have been more than 12 by human standards. Thin, pale gray skin streaked with blood, dark eyes wide with animal terror. One arm clutched a black metallic cube against her chest so tightly her fingers had split open around it. The security perimeter raised weapons instantly. The child flinched so violently she nearly fell back into the burning pod. And then every device on Earth turned on at once. Phones, satellites, hospital monitors, traffic displays, military systems, apartment televisions, deep space observatories on the far side of the moon. Every screen on Earth became black. A symbol appeared in silver, 3 circles surrounding a single vertical line. No translation accompanied it, yet somehow the message beneath arrived already understood inside every human mind. Return the survivor. The child made a sound then, not loud, not dramatic, just one broken noise of absolute fear. Across the planet, billions stared at their screens, while something cold settled into the center of human civilization for the very first time. Then the message continued. She belongs to the throne of Ilyrian. Return her before we arrive. 6 hours remained, and standing in the rain beside the burning pod, the alien child looked up at the armed humans surrounding her and whispered 5 words in shattered English no one had taught her. Please don't let them come. Within 20 minutes of the crash, the Eternal Harbor Memorial had disappeared behind military barricades, electronic warfare screens, and enough armed personnel to occupy a small nation. Civilian broadcasts were cut. Airspace above the eastern seaboard closed completely. By midnight, every major government on Earth had publicly denied rumors of extraterrestrial contact while simultaneously moving strategic fleets into combat readiness. Nobody believed the denials. Too many people had seen the sky split open. Too many devices had displayed the same message. And somewhere inside a reinforced medical wing buried beneath the Atlantic Defense Complex, the alien child refused to let go of the black cube in her hands. Dr. Elias Mercer noticed that first. Not the blood loss. Not the fractures visible beneath her thin gray skin. Not even the fact that her biology shared impossible similarities with humans despite clearly not being human at all. It was the way she held the cube. Like drowning people held oxygen. The child sat silently on the edge of the examination bed, while translators processed fragments of her language in real time. Medical drones hovered around her carefully, projecting soft blue light across injuries no human medicine should have understood this quickly. Yet every time someone approached the cube, panic flooded her face, so completely that her heartbeat nearly doubled. "She thinks we're going to take it," Mercer said quietly. The intelligence officers behind the observation glass exchanged looks but said nothing. Outside the chamber, the situation was deteriorating by the hour. Astronomers had detected gravitational distortions forming beyond Pluto less than 40 minutes after the transmission. Something large was approaching Earth at impossible speed. Military analysts could not agree whether it was a fleet or a single vessel, only that whatever produced those readings possessed technology decades beyond humanity's own. And somehow, impossibly, the child already knew human language. Not fluently, not naturally, but enough to understand fear. Mercer approached slowly and sat across from her instead of standing. The movement surprised several armed guards because nobody had authorized direct contact yet. But the girl looked exhausted beyond terror now, trembling from the effort of staying conscious. "What's your name?" Mercer asked gently. For a moment she only stared at him. Then she answered, "Lyr." The pronunciation sounded incomplete, as if human speech physically struggled to shape it correctly. Mercer nodded anyway. "I'm Elias." Her eyes moved toward the observation glass immediately. Smart. She already understood where authorities stood in the room. "They decide," she asked quietly. "Some of them think they do." For the first time, something almost resembling confusion crossed her face. That reaction unsettled Mercer more than the transmission from space, because it meant wherever she came from, authority probably worked differently. Cleaner, more absolute, the kind of civilization that did not tolerate uncertainty. Then Lyr suddenly grabbed his wrist. Hard. Every guard in the room raised weapons instantly. But she was staring directly into his eyes now with such naked desperation that Mercer felt cold without understanding why. "They kill worlds," she whispered. "Not people, worlds." The room went still. One of the intelligence officers immediately ordered the translators replayed 3 separate times to confirm accuracy. The result never changed. Not people, worlds. Before Mercer could respond, alarms erupted through the medical wing. Every screen turned black again. This time the face that appeared was human-shaped only in the broadest sense. Tall, pale, hairless. Its dark uniform carried the same silver symbol seen during the first transmission. But what froze the room was not the figure itself. It was a calmness. No anger, no shouting, no theatrical threats, just certainty. "This communication is directed to the governing authorities of Earth," the figure said in perfect English. "You currently harbor stolen state property belonging to the throne of Ilyr. Return the survivor immediately, and your species will remain outside Imperial Correction." The phrase Imperial Correction landed like poison inside the room. Behind the glass, analysts were already recording every movement, every vocal pattern, every micro-expression. The figure continued. "You have mistaken proximity for significance. This matter does not concern your civilization. Return the survivor." Lyr began shaking before the message even finished. Mercer noticed something else then. Not fear alone. Recognition. She knew this individual personally. The transmission ended abruptly, but the silence afterward felt heavier than the words themselves. Around the world, governments demanded military updates they did not possess. Civilian networks exploded into panic and conspiracy. Religious groups declared the beginning of prophecy. Markets crashed across 3 continents before emergency freezes halted trading entirely. And buried beneath the Atlantic cliffs, Humanity faced a decision it had never expected to make on its first night in a populated universe. Hand over one terrified child, or gamble the survival of Earth itself. 3 hours later, representatives from 12 nations gathered inside Strategic Chamber 1 beneath the defense complex. The meeting was classified above nuclear protocol level, meaning even most heads of state would never know what was discussed there. Lyr sat at the far end of the chamber wrapped in a thermal blanket far too large for a small frame, while generals, diplomats, and intelligence chiefs argued over her existence like a live explosive sitting on the table. She may be lying. She may be bait. She may be carrying biological agents. She may be the reason they're coming here at all. Through all of it, Lyr said nothing, until one question finally reached her directly. What exactly are they afraid you'll reveal? The room quieted immediately. Lyr looked down at the black cube in her hands. For several seconds, she seemed unsure whether to answer. Then slowly, carefully, she placed the cube onto the steel table. The surface unfolded like liquid metal, and every light inside the chamber dimmed as a star map appeared above it. Thousands of systems glowed across the projection. Then entire sections went dark, one after another, systematic, erased. These, Lyr whispered, her voice trembling now in a way no translator could soften, are the civilizations they said never existed. The star map continued expanding above the chamber table long after the room fell silent. Entire regions of space blinked out in slow sequence, not violently, not dramatically, but with the cold efficiency of records being deleted from existence. Each vantage system carried attached population estimates, biosphere markers, trade routes, cultural archives. Billions of lives reduced to fading points of light. No explosions. No battles. Only absence. General Naomi Vale stared at the projection with growing disbelief because the patterns were impossible. These were not random wars or isolated conquests. The disappearances formed corridors, strategic lanes. Entire civilizations were moved to reshape interstellar geography itself. They erased history, one intelligence analyst whispered. Lyr looked at him immediately. No, she said softly. They erased memory. That sentence changed the room, because suddenly the Empire's demand no longer sounded territorial. It sounded terrified. The black cube rotated again, revealing fragments of archive recordings buried inside corrupted data layers. Broken images flickered across the chamber air. Alien cities burning beneath orbital fire. Crowds herded toward enormous ships. Symbols scraped from monuments. Children separated from families. Then the footage abruptly distorted. A warning symbol flashed across the cube. Tracking attempt detected. Every military officer in the room moved instantly. The chamber sealed automatically. Electronic isolation fields activated inside the walls. Technicians rushed toward containment consoles while cyber warfare teams tried tracing the intrusion source. But they were already too late. Every screen in Strategic Chamber 1 turned white. Not black this time. White. And a new figure appeared. Unlike the previous transmission, this one wore no military uniform. Dark robes draped across a thin skeletal frame, whose expression carried something far more dangerous than rage. Disappointment. You opened the archive, the figure said calmly. Nobody answered. The being's pale eyes moved across the room before settling directly on Lyr. You have complicated matters unnecessarily. Lyr physically recoiled. General Vale noticed something important then. The child was not reacting like prey cornered by a predator. She was reacting like someone facing a teacher. Or worse. You're inside secured Earth systems, Vale said sharply. Explain how this transmission breached containment. The figure ignored her entirely. That archive belongs to the throne of Ilyr, it continued. The information contained within it is restricted under Imperial continuity law. Possession alone constitutes hostile action. Vale leaned forward slightly. Funny thing about Earth law, she replied. It stops applying the second someone threatens our planet. For the first time, the figure acknowledged her existence. Not with anger, with curiosity. You are General Naomi Vale, it said, architect of the Atlantic Defense Grid, survivor of the Jakarta Cascades, daughter of Elias Vale, Several people in the room stiffened immediately. No public database contained half that information. The figure continued speaking before anyone could respond. You built planetary defense systems before your species possessed confirmed extraterrestrial contact. Your orbital infrastructure contains weapons platforms concealed beneath civilian architecture. Lunar excavation projects exceeded declared industrial necessity by 600% over the last 18 years. Now the entire room had gone cold, because those projects were classified beyond presidential access. General Vale's expression never changed, but inside, alarm spread through her with surgical precision. This was not reconnaissance gathered in recent hours. Whoever these beings were, they had been studying humanity for years, maybe longer. The robed figure tilted its head slightly. What interests the throne, it said quietly, is why. No one spoke. Outside the chamber, emergency alerts rolled across Earth's defense networks. Unidentified objects had appeared near the edge of the solar system. Not ships, too small, too fast. Probes, perhaps, yet they moved with deliberate formation patterns that suggested reconnaissance rather than invasion. Humanity was being watched in real time. Again, you prepare for us, the figure observed. General Vale finally answered. We prepared for anybody. A strange pause followed. Then something happened no human analyst expected. The alien figure smiled, not mockingly, nervously. It lasted less than a second, but everyone in the chamber saw it, and suddenly the balance of fear shifted, because empires did not smile nervously unless something had gone wrong. The transmission terminated instantly afterward, cutting the room back into darkness before emergency lighting restored itself. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then military chatter exploded through the chamber. How much do they know? How long have they monitored us? How compromised are defense networks? But General Vale ignored all of it because LYR was staring at her now with visible confusion. You do not know? The child asked quietly. Know what? LYR hesitated. The hesitation mattered. Every instinct inside Vale told her the next words were dangerous. The Empire avoids worlds like yours. The room went silent again. Vale folded her hands carefully. Explain. LYR looked genuinely unsettled now, as though she had just discovered something impossible. The archive said humans were extinct. Nobody breathed. LYR pointed toward the ceiling, meaning Earth itself. Your species designation appears only in restricted historical records. Dead civilization category. Pre-expansion conflict species. Her voice grew quieter. The Empire teaches that humans destroyed themselves before reaching the stars. A chill spread across the chamber, unlike anything the invasion threats had created, because every human in that room understood the implication instantly. Someone had hidden Earth from the galaxy. Deliberately, General Vale felt her pulse slow instead of quicken. Years of strange military funding. Buried projects hidden inside civilian budgets. Deep space listening stations constructed without explanation. Defense systems built by leaders who never publicly justified them. Pieces were aligning into something far older than first contact. Who hit us? Vale asked, but LYR was no longer looking at her. She was staring at a symbol that had appeared silently on one of the chamber monitors. A white crown encircled by stars. The moment LYR saw it, the color drained from her face. No, she whispered. The chamber doors opened, and 3 individuals walked inside, wearing black uniforms with no national insignia at all. The 3 figures entered the chamber with the quiet confidence of people who did not expect to be questioned. That alone told General Vale more than their uniforms did. No insignia, no rank markings, no visible weapons. Yet every armed guard inside Strategic Chamber 1 instinctively shifted aside as they passed, not from fear, but recognition buried so deep it bypassed conscious thought. Clearance overrides flashed across security systems before anyone issued commands. Door locks disengaged automatically. Surveillance feeds rerouted themselves. Someone had given these people authority above nations. The oldest of the 3 stopped at the edge of the star map projection and looked up at the erased systems hanging above the table. So, he said softly, they finally found us. Nobody in the chamber liked how calm he sounded. General Vale stood immediately. Identify yourself. The man's eyes moved toward her. Gray, tired, familiar somehow. Director Adrian Holt, he answered. Continuity Office. No one recognized the agency. That was worse than if they had. Holt studied LYR next. The child had gone completely rigid beneath her blanket, clutching the black archive cube so tightly her hands trembled. You know who we are, Holt observed. LYR swallowed visibly. Yes. The room tightened around that single answer. Vale stepped closer. You're going to explain why an alien refugee knows your organization before my government does. For the first time, Holt looked mildly uncomfortable. Because your government, he replied carefully, was never informed the Continuity Office existed. One of the diplomats laughed once under his breath, sharp and disbelieving. That's not how constitutional authority works. Holt turned toward him without emotion. Constitutional authority ended the day humanity was marked for extinction. Silence crashed into the chamber. Vale stared at him. Explain that sentence immediately. Instead, Holt gestured toward the projection of vanished civilizations. The Ilyrian Throne doesn't conquer species. Conquest creates memory. Records. Survivors. His expression hardened slightly. They remove civilizations before they become inconvenient. Elwire looked down. Holt noticed. You've seen the cleansing fleets, haven't you? The child nodded once. Not dramatic. Not tearful. Just defeated. They erase language first, she whispered. Then history. Then stars. No one spoke after that, because suddenly the impossible pieces were beginning to align into something terrifyingly coherent. Earth had been hidden from galactic records because someone knew what happened to civilizations that became visible. Humanity had not simply been isolated. Humanity had been concealed. General Vale felt anger rising now beneath the shock. How long? She asked quietly. Holt met her eyes. Officially, since 1968. The room erupted instantly. Questions collided over one another. Demands. Accusations. Half the officials believed they were being manipulated by a rogue faction. The other half looked horrified because Holt's answers explained too much. The moon excavations. The black-budget orbital arrays. The impossible defense spending hidden inside civilian infrastructure. Holt allowed the noise for several seconds before speaking again. The first signal arrived during your Cold War. Deep space transmission. Automated distress beacon from a destroyed non-human vessel entering the solar system. He looked toward the projection overhead. The beacon contained one warning repeated in 31 languages. He paused. Stay invisible. A heavy silence followed. Holt activated another holographic layer above the table. Old photographs appeared. Grainy lunar construction sites. Deep underground facilities. Launch platforms hidden beneath oceans. The Continuity Office was created because humanity faced a mathematical reality, he continued. If hostile civilizations existed, then visibility was suicide. So Earth disappeared itself. The diplomat from Argentina stared upward at the hidden infrastructure with disbelief. You turned the entire species into a classified operation. Yes. You had no authority to decide that. Holt's voice remained calm. And yet, you are alive because we did. Before anyone could answer, alarms suddenly screamed across the chamber. Every display shifted red. Multiple gravitational entries detected. Outer system perimeter breached. Strategic analysts rushed toward consoles as tracking projections expanded across the walls. Dozens of objects appeared near the Kuiper belt, dropping from faster-than-light transit in organized formation. Not dozens. Hundreds. The room temperature seemed to fall. LYR stared at the tactical display in horror. That is not retrieval force. One naval officer answered quietly. Then what is it? The child's eyes never left the projection. Cleansing fleet. For the first time since entering the chamber, Director Holt lost composure. Only slightly. But Vale saw it, and that frightened her more than the incoming armada. Across Earth, emergency systems activated openly now. No more secrecy. Civil defense alerts rolled through major cities. Orbital traffic halted. Military convoys moved beneath darkened highways. Satellites shifted position across low orbit with mechanical precision. Humanity's hidden preparations were surfacing all at once, and the world was reacting badly. Panic spread through global networks faster than governments could suppress it. Leaked footage of LYR's arrival flooded civilian feeds. Then came something worse. The Empire responded. Videos began appearing across Earth's networks within minutes. Perfectly edited, perfectly translated. Footage showing LYR's species attacking civilian populations, burning ships, dead children. Broadcast overlays labeling them extremists, insurgents, biological radicals responsible for interstellar terrorism. Public opinion fractured instantly. Some believed the Empire. Some believed humanity was being manipulated into war. Others demanded LYR be surrendered before Earth suffered annihilation. Protests erupted outside government buildings before sunrise. Inside Strategic Chamber 1, LYR watched the footage spread across 100 live feeds with growing despair. "They always do this," she whispered. General Vale looked toward her. "Do what?" "They make fear easier than truth." The black archive cube suddenly pulsed again. Everyone froze. New coordinates unfolded across the holographic display. Incomplete, but recognizable as stellar navigation routes. Thousands of blinking markers appeared scattered across hidden sectors beyond map space. Holt stepped forward sharply. "No!" LYR stared at the projection in confusion. It should not unlock yet. But it already had. A new message appeared beneath the coordinates. Survivor network active. Estimated remaining population, 11,204,991. The chamber went dead silent. Not one refugee. Not one lost species. Millions. Hidden. Still alive. And then the archive revealed one final line. Tracking request accepted. Outside Earth's orbit, the incoming fleet accelerated. The fleet accelerated so fast the tactical projections struggled to update in real time. Hundreds of signatures surged inward from the edge of the solar system. Their drive wakes distorting space itself into rippling bands of blue-white light. Human analysts immediately realized something terrifying. The cleansing fleet was no longer approaching cautiously. It was rushing, which meant the Empire was afraid of losing something more valuable than military advantage. Inside Strategic Chamber 1, no one spoke for several seconds after the archive revealed the survivor count. 11 million lives hidden beyond known space. 11 million witnesses the Empire believed erased forever. General Vale looked toward Director Holt slowly. "You knew," she said. Not a question. Holt didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough. The realization spread across the room in waves. The Continuity Office had not merely hidden Earth from the galaxy. They had been operating beyond Earth for years, possibly decades. "You found them already," Vale continued. Holt exhaled once through his nose, tired rather than ashamed. "We found fragments, signals, drifting colonies, deep space shelters." He glanced toward the star map. Most were too damaged to save in time. "Most?" one intelligence officer snapped. Holt touched the table interface. New holograms appeared above the chamber. Massive evacuation routes. Hidden jump corridors. Civilian transport convoys moving through regions no public human chart had ever recorded. And at the center of all of it sat a classified operation designation. Shepard. The room exploded again. "You deployed fleets outside the solar system? You made first contact without oversight? How many worlds know humanity exists?" But Vale barely heard the arguments anymore, because another detail had locked onto her attention: the timestamps. The evacuation convoys had launched 3 days earlier, 3 full days before LYR crashed onto Earth. Holt saw her expression change. "Yes," he said quietly. "We knew she was coming." The chamber froze. Even LYR stared at him now. "How?" For the first time since entering the room, Holt looked genuinely conflicted, like a man deciding how much truth the world could survive at once. Then he activated one final file. An audio recording filled the chamber. Old, distorted, human voices buried beneath static. Mission log, January 17, 1968. We found a vessel approximately 800,000 kilometers beyond lunar orbit. No active weapons. No surviving crew. The language systems are damaged, but translation repeats one phrase consistently. Static crackle violently. Then a terrified voice finished the sentence. Humanity must remain dead. The recording ended. No one moved. Holt folded his hands behind his back. The wreck carried star maps, fragments of imperial records, and references to extinction campaigns. We spent decades believing Earth survived because we were insignificant. His eyes hardened slightly. We were wrong. Vale's voice lowered. Then why were we hidden? Holt looked toward Lyr. The child already understood before he answered, because humanity already existed in their history. A cold silence swept the chamber. Holt activated another projection. This one displayed ancient alien records recovered from the 1968 wreck. Most of the data remained corrupted, but several phrases had survived translation. Predatory expansion species, unstable war adaptation, soul system containment failure. Then the final classification appeared. Extinction status unconfirmed. General Vale felt something shift deep in the room at that moment. Not fear, perspective. Because suddenly humanity's hidden preparations no longer looked paranoid. They looked inherited. As far as the Empire knew, Holt continued, human civilization destroyed itself centuries ago during internal wars before achieving viable expansion. That assumption kept Earth beneath notice. He glanced toward the incoming fleet projections. Until now. Lyr stared upward at the translated records, visibly shaken. You fought them before? No, Holt said carefully. Not us. That answer landed harder than if he had admitted war outright. Not us, meaning someone human had existed beyond recorded history. Before anyone could press further, another alert detonated through the chamber. Priority transmission incoming. Source confirmed. Ilyrian Throne. The screens darkened instantly. This time the figure appearing across the displays wore armor. Black metallic plating covered a tall frame marked with silver ceremonial lines. Unlike the previous transmissions, no attempt at diplomacy remained in its expression. Only urgency. You have violated protected continuity law. The figure stated immediately. You have activated survivor archives. You have interfered with sanctioned historical correction. Its eyes narrowed slightly. And now you move refugee populations beneath concealment routes. Every person in the chamber turned toward Holt. The Empire knew about Shepard, which meant their systems had already been compromised. The armored figure continued. You misunderstand your situation. This is not invasion. It is containment. The being leaned slightly closer toward the camera feed. Your species was buried for a reason. General Vale stepped forward before anyone stopped her. And what reason was that? For the first time, hesitation crossed the alien commander's face. Tiny, brief, but real. Then the answer came. Because humanity does not stop. Silence followed those words. The commander seemed to realize too late what he had admitted. You inherited extinction, he corrected sharply. Your species destabilizes all imperial equilibrium. Historical models demonstrate catastrophic expansion behavior under prolonged conflict conditions. Holt almost smiled at that. You're afraid, he said softly. The commander ignored him. The survivor child and all associated refugee assets will be surrendered immediately. Failure to comply authorizes total system sterilization. Vale folded her arms. That sounds expensive. The commander's eyes hardened. You believe concealment and primitive fortifications matter because you survived unseen. But survival is not victory. His gaze moved across the chamber. Your species mistakes preparation for readiness. Then his attention shifted toward Lyr, and for the first time, genuine emotion entered his voice. You should have stayed hidden. The transmission terminated instantly. Outside the chamber, emergency alerts intensified across every military network on Earth. Deep space reconnaissance had confirmed the fleet composition fully now. Not hundreds. Over 2,000 vessels. And moving behind them, barely visible beneath distorted gravity shadows, came something far larger. Something that was not a warship. Director Holt stared at the tactical display with quiet dread. General Vale noticed immediately. "What is that?" Holt answered without looking away. "A worldbreaker." The room went silent again. But Lyr was no longer staring at the incoming fleet. She was staring at the ancient translated records floating above the chamber, at one corrupted line barely visible beneath damaged text. And when she finally spoke, her voice sounded small with disbelief. "The Empire didn't hide humanity from the galaxy," she whispered. "They hid the galaxy from humanity." The sentence lingered in the chamber like the echo of something ancient waking up. Nobody spoke immediately because no one wanted to say the obvious question aloud. What exactly had humanity done before recorded history that made an interstellar empire fear its return centuries later? General Vale stared at the corrupted records overhead while tactical projections continued updating across the walls around them. The incoming fleet spread wider now, splitting into containment formations around the outer system with terrifying precision. Entire sectors of space disappeared beneath moving concentrations of warships. And behind them all, the worldbreaker advanced slowly. It resembled no vessel humanity had imagined. The object was spherical, almost moon-sized, wrapped in layered metallic rings rotating around a hollow black center that swallowed light unnaturally. Even the tactical display struggled to render correctly. Gravitational distortions bent the surrounding stars inward like water circling a drain. One analyst finally whispered what everyone else was thinking. "That thing kills planets." Director Holt answered quietly. "No, it kills systems." Silence followed again. Across Earth, the truth had become impossible to contain now. Governments abandoned secrecy entirely. Emergency broadcasts filled every civilian network, while military mobilization unfolded openly across the globe. Trains disappeared into underground transit tunnels beneath major cities. Orbital elevators shifted into evacuation priority. Massive oceanic platforms, once classified as climate infrastructure, revealed hidden weapon arrays beneath retracting armored shells. Humanity's invisible preparations were surfacing everywhere at once, and people were adapting faster than the Empire expected. That was the part surprising the aliens most. There was fear, certainly, panic in some regions, riots in others. But the overall pattern disturbed Imperial analysts monitoring Earth's networks. Human civilization was not collapsing beneath existential threat. It was organizing. Factories converted overnight. Civilian cargo fleets rerouted toward classified launch corridors without public explanation. Retired military personnel reported voluntarily to defense stations before conscription orders existed. Entire cities rehearsed evacuation procedures with practice efficiency that suggested preparation long predating first contact. The Empire had expected chaos. Instead, humanity behaved like a species finally confronting a nightmare it had anticipated for generations. Inside Strategic Chamber 1, Shepherd operations accelerated. Hidden refugee populations scattered across deep space were being evacuated toward protected routes around Sol. Millions of survivors began emerging from concealed habitats, damaged colony ships, drifting stations buried inside nebulae. Species the galaxy believed extinct suddenly moved through secret corridors under human escort, and the Empire noticed immediately. They're redirecting pursuit fleets, an operations officer warned. They've identified the evacuation lanes. Holographic projections shifted. Red markers surged toward the fleeing refugee convoys. General Vale's jaw tightened. How long until interception? 8 hours at current burn velocity. Too fast. Far too fast. Humanity did not possess enough military force to engage directly across that much territory. The Empire's numerical advantage was overwhelming. Even with hidden defenses, Earth could not protect every convoy simultaneously. Lyr stood near the tactical display, watching entire refugee populations scatter before approaching annihilation again. Her expression had changed since arriving on Earth. Less fear now. More guilt. "They came because of me," she whispered. "No," Holt answered immediately. "They came because the truth survived." But Lyr barely seemed to hear him. The black archive cube pulsed softly in her hands as new data streams unlocked themselves across the chamber systems. Hidden refugee locations, lost colonies, historical records, and one recurring symbol appearing again and again beneath corrupted imperial files. A white crown crossed out by a human handprint. General Vale noticed it immediately. What does that mean? Lyr hesitated. The hesitation told everyone the answer mattered. It is forbidden history, she admitted quietly. Stories only. Her eyes lifted toward Vale uncertainly. The Empire teaches that long ago another species challenged imperial rule across multiple sectors. Predators, expansionists, violent even among themselves. Several officers exchanged uneasy looks. Lyr continued carefully. They called themselves humanity. The room fell still again. Not descendants. Not similar. Humanity. Director Holt looked unsurprised. That frightened Vale more than the revelation itself. You already knew, she said. Holt answered without denial. Fragments. Never confirmation. Then tell me the part you're hiding. Before Holt could respond, alarm screamed through the chamber. One refugee convoy had stopped moving. The tactical display zoomed automatically toward a cluster of civilian transports near the outer asteroid regions. Hundreds of vessels drifted in defensive formation around damage drives, while Imperial strike cruisers emerged from faster-than-light transit directly ahead of them. The convoy was trapped. Live transmission feeds erupted across the chamber. Refugee civilians flooded overcrowded corridors aboard failing transports. Children, families, species Earth had never seen before. Panic spread to the convoy as Imperial warships surrounded them with mathematical precision. Then the Empire did something unexpected. They opened public channels. Every screen across Earth switched to the live feed simultaneously. The armored Imperial commander appeared again. You interfere with lawful historical correction, he announced calmly. Observe the consequence. Behind him, targeting systems locked onto the convoy. General Vale felt cold realization settle through her. This isn't military strategy, she said quietly. Holt nodded once. It's theater. The Empire was preparing an execution broadcast, not because the convoy mattered tactically, but because fear did. If humanity watched millions die in real time for choosing protection over surrender, public resolve might fracture instantly. The commander continued speaking. Return the archive bearer and cease evacuation operations. This demonstration ends. Lyr stepped forward suddenly. I will go. The chamber turned toward her. The child stood trembling but determined now, clutching the archive cube against her chest. If I surrender, they stop. No, Holt said flatly. They need me alive. For now. Lyr looked toward the convoy feed where terrified civilians crowded against viewports waiting for death. They will die because of me. General Vale crossed the room before anyone else moved. No, she said firmly. They'll die because someone decided fear should rule the galaxy. Lyr's voice cracked. You cannot save everyone. Vale looked at the Imperial fleet surrounding the convoy, then toward Earth's hidden tactical overlays flickering beneath classified defense layers. Humanity had spent generations preparing for monsters in the dark. Now the monsters were finally here. Watch us try, she said quietly. Then she turned toward command operations. Activate lantern net. Several officers froze. One whispered immediately, General, the net isn't combat certified. It doesn't need to be. Holt stared at her sharply now. If you deploy lantern this early, they'll understand what we are. Vale's expression hardened. They already do. Far beyond Earth. Hidden structures buried silently across the outer solar system began waking for the first time in human history. Far beyond the orbit of Neptune, ancient machines opened their eyes. At first, nothing visible changed. Imperial targeting systems continued tracking the trapped refugee convoy, while strike cruisers maneuvered into firing position with mechanical precision. Across Earth, billions watched the live execution feed in frozen silence. Entire cities stood motionless beneath, giant public screens. Soldiers paused beside convoy routes. Children stared upward from underground shelters. Humanity's first interstellar war had narrowed into a single unbearable moment, and still the refugee convoy drifted helplessly beneath the guns of the Empire. The armored Imperial commander raised one hand. Weapons charged across the surrounding fleet. Lyr could barely breathe now. Please. General Vale never looked away from the tactical display. Wait. For what? Vale's answer came softly. For them to commit. 3 seconds later, the Empire fired. White lances of energy erupted from the strike cruisers, converging toward the refugee transports in a storm bright enough to overwhelm civilian camera feeds. Millions across Earth flinched instinctively as the barrage crossed empty space. Then the beams vanished. Not dissipated. Vanished. The energy folded inward abruptly, bending into impossible curves before disappearing into darkness itself. Imperial targeting systems lost lock instantly. The surrounding strike cruisers staggered sideways beneath sudden gravitational turbulence. For one heartbeat, nobody understood what they were seeing. Then space rippled. Massive invisible structures emerged around the convoy like ghosts surfacing beneath black water. Entire regions of emptiness distorted as hidden gravitational lenses activated simultaneously across thousands of kilometers. The stars themselves warped into curved streaks around colossal shapes buried in darkness. Lantern net. The Empire stopped moving. Inside Strategic Chamber 1, tactical officers stared at incoming data with disbelief despite knowing the project existed. Because even most human command staff had never seen Lantern fully activated before. The net was not a shield. It was a trap. Decades earlier, human physicists studying deep space defense realized conventional fleets could never match a superior interstellar empire directly. So humanity built something stranger instead. An interconnected lattice of hidden gravitational engines spread silently across the outer system, disguised as debris fields, research stations, mining relays, and dormant infrastructure. Not designed to stop attacks. Designed to redirect them. The Empire's own weapons now curved backward through distorted space. The first strike cruiser disappeared beneath its own bombardment. The second lost half its formation as redirected energy tore through its hull from impossible angles. Shock waves rolled across Imperial lines instantly. Ships scattered in confusion while targeting systems failed catastrophically under shifting gravity distortions. And still humanity had not fired a single shot. Across Earth, stunned silence gave way to something else. Hope. The Imperial commander's voice erupted across the emergency feed, for the first time stripped of calm. Impossible. Collapsed the field immediately. But the order came too late, because Lantern Net had never been meant for one battle. It had been built to turn entire invasions against themselves. Hidden gravitational anchors ignited across the outer system in cascading sequence. Space folded unpredictably around Imperial formations. Long-range communications fragmented. Navigation systems produced contradictory vectors. Entire sections of the cleansing fleet drifted off course as physics itself betrayed them. Inside the chamber, Director Holt watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The first rule of surviving stronger civilizations, he said quietly, is to make strength unreliable. General Vale barely heard him. Something worse had appeared on sensors. The worldbreaker was moving, not retreating, advancing directly toward Sol at accelerating speed. It's ignoring Lantern, an analyst warned. Holt's expression darkened immediately, because it doesn't need targeting systems. The tactical display magnified the massive construct as it pushed through gravitational distortions unaffected. The rotating rings around its hollow center accelerated slowly, while impossible amounts of energy gathered inside the black core. Lyr stared at it in horror. "That is not a weapon," she whispered. Vale looked toward her sharply. "What is it?" The child swallowed hard. "It is a graveyard." No one understood. Then new readings flooded command systems. The black center of the worldbreaker was generating artificial singularity pressure. Not enough to create a true black hole, something far more controlled, focused, designed. Holt answered before anyone else could. It collapsed the stars. Silence hit the room like physical force. Not planets. Stars. The realization spread instantly through every military mind present. The Empire had not brought the construct to conquer Earth. They intended to erase Sol itself. And suddenly Lantern Net no longer mattered. Because all the hidden defenses, all the fleets, All the preparations humanity built across generations meant nothing if the sun died. Across Earth, emergency systems escalated into full extinction protocols. Civilian broadcasts shifted from defense instructions to continuity preservation. Underground archives sealed automatically. Genetic repositories activated beneath Antarctica. Massive evacuation arcs hidden beneath lunar shipyards began powering up publicly for the first time. Humanity was preparing for the possibility of losing Earth. Yet amid the chaos, something strange happened. The refugee convoy survived long enough to escape. Then another convoy escaped. Then another. Lantern Net had shattered Imperial coordination across the outer system just enough for hidden human rescue fleets to move through the confusion. Civilian transports vanished into protected corridors, while Empire formations struggled to stabilize beneath collapsing navigation grids. Humanity was saving millions, and the Empire was beginning to panic. The armored commander appeared again across tactical screens, fury finally visible beneath his composure. "You do not understand what your species was before," he shouted. "You were buried because survival required it." General Vale stepped toward the screen. "Funny," she said coldly. That sounded exactly like fear. The commander looked directly into her eyes then, and for the first time, genuine hatred surfaced. "You think yourselves defenders," he said, "but every empire the galaxy feared learned terror from humanity first." The transmission cut abruptly. Then every sensor in the chamber screamed at once. The worldbreaker's core ignited. A line of absolute darkness began forming across the center of soul space itself. Light bent inward unnaturally. Gravitational readings spiked beyond prediction models. Even Earth's moon shifted slightly beneath the distortion. The weapon was activating. And buried beneath the alarms, another signal suddenly emerged from deep space. Ancient, human, unknown. Director Holt turned pale the moment he recognized it. "No," he whispered. General Vale looked toward him. "What is it?" But Holt was already staring at the incoming transmission like a man watching the dead return. Because the signal identification code belonged to a vessel humanity lost before modern civilization even existed. The signal came from beyond the worldbreaker. Weak at first, fragmented. Ancient radio pulses buried beneath gravitational interference. Human command systems struggled to process it because the identification structure did not match any modern protocol in existence. And yet every continuity office archive recognized it instantly. Director Holt stared at the decoded transmission in absolute disbelief. "No one survives that long," he whispered. General Vale stepped beside him. "What vessel is it?" Holt answered slowly, as though the words themselves felt impossible. "The Odyssey Initiative." The chamber fell silent. Even the name carried weight. Not because anyone outside the continuity office recognized it, but because something deep inside humanity did. A strange instinctive familiarity, like hearing the echo of forgotten history. LYR looked between them in confusion. What is Odyssey? Holt never looked away from the incoming signal. Our first empire. The words hit harder than any battlefield casualty report. Across the chamber, archive records unlocked automatically under emergency authority. Hidden files spilled across holographic displays in massive streams of buried history. Images emerged from thousands of years earlier. Crude interstellar vessels carrying human insignias no modern nation had ever used. Colony worlds, war fleets, alien treaties, and then fire, worlds burning, entire star systems collapsing into war. Humanity had reached the stars once before, and the galaxy had erased the evidence. The truth detonated through the room with terrifying clarity. Human civilization on Earth was not humanity's beginning. It was humanity's second chance. The first expansion nearly destroyed interstellar civilization, Holt said quietly. Human factions evolved faster under conflict than any species the galaxy had ever encountered. Every war made them stronger. Every defeat made them more dangerous. He swallowed hard. Eventually, the surviving powers united against them. General Vale stared at the ancient recordings. "They wiped us out." "No," LYR whispered suddenly. Everyone turned toward her. The child pointed toward the worldbreaker. "They failed." The ancient signal strengthened. Then a ship emerged from darkness. Not large, not elegant. The vessel looked scarred beyond recognition, its hull patched together from centuries of survival across impossible distances. Entire sections drifted dead and frozen. Yet the moment it appeared, Imperial formations reacted instantly. Panic spread through the cleansing fleet. The worldbreaker stopped charging. And for the first time since entering Seoul, the Empire retreated. Not strategically, fearfully. A transmission erupted across all channels. This time no alien face appeared. Only an old human voice carrying centuries of exhaustion. If this signal reaches Earth, the voice said, then humanity survived. Every person in Strategic Chamber 1 froze. The message continued through static. We failed to stop the collapse wars. Failed to stop ourselves. By the end, the galaxy feared humanity more than extinction. A weak laugh crackled through the transmission. Fair enough, honestly. Ancient stars drifted behind the damaged vessel as it moved slowly toward Seoul. But before the last systems fell, we hit Earth, wiped the records, buried the species beneath its own history. The voice weakened. We hoped if humanity began again, maybe you would choose differently. Silence filled the chamber. Not triumph, not shock, reflection, because suddenly the Empire's terror made sense. Humanity was not feared because it was crueler than other species. Humanity was feared because it adapted faster than fear itself. The old transmission continued. If the Empire found you, then they never stopped hunting survivors. Static swallowed half the sentence. That means they're still ruling through extinction. Another pause. So I need to know something. The voice sharpened slightly. When they threatened people under your protection, across Earth, billions listened. What did humanity do? General Vale looked toward the tactical display. The refugee convoys were escaping. Lantern Net still held, and despite impossible odds, Earth had refused surrender at every stage. Slowly, she stepped toward the command console and opened a direct transmission toward the ancient vessel. We protected them, she answered. For several seconds, only static replied. Then the old voice laughed softly, not mocking, proud. Good, it whispered. The ancient ship changed course, directly toward the worldbreaker. Imperial fleets erupted into motion instantly. Tried to intercept, but the damaged vessel accelerated with impossible speed. Hidden systems dormant for centuries ignited beneath its broken hull. Gravity distortions rolled outward in massive waves. The Empire understood too late what the ship truly was. Not a survivor, a weapon. The Odyssey vessel rammed directly into the worldbreaker singularity core. Space shattered white. The explosion never looked like fire. It looked like reality tearing open for one impossible second before collapsing inward. Gravitational shock waves ripped through the cleansing fleet. The worldbreaker imploded silently, dragging surrounding Imperial vessels into the collapse with it. Then everything stopped. Where the Empire's greatest weapon had existed, only debris remained. Across the solar system, surviving Imperial formations began retreating immediately, not regrouping, not negotiating, running. Human fleets did not pursue. They didn't need to, because the galaxy had already witnessed the truth. Earth broadcast the archive publicly within hours. Erased civilizations, extinction campaigns, survivor testimonies. Millions of refugees stepped from hiding beneath human protection, while Imperial propaganda collapsed across known space in real time. And something unexpected followed. Other species began resisting. Entire sectors revolted against Imperial authority almost overnight. Conquered worlds reopened forbidden histories. Hidden populations emerged from silence. The Empire had ruled through inevitability for centuries. Humanity broke inevitability. Weeks later, LYR stood beside General Vale overlooking Earth from orbital command as refugee fleets entered protected space below. Thousands of ships, millions of survivors, entire civilizations alive because humanity refused a hand over one frightened child. You changed the galaxy, LYR said quietly. Vale watched the refugee convoys descend toward Earth. No, she answered softly. We reminded it. Far beyond Earth, new patrol fleets moved through the dark between stars. Human ships now, not hidden anymore, not extinct, And across the galaxy, governments updated first contact protocols with a warning written into every strategic doctrine thereafter. If humans place someone under their protection, do not test what that means.